The following events could have all been avoided if the villains had just not messed with the grandmother of the main character. But since you messed with the grandmother, just wanted to provide for her grandchildren, live off the land, protect the forest, and just be one of the indigenous people, just wanted to be one with nature, you messed with her, you fucked up, and now the main character is coming after you. Sayen is an Amazon original directed by Alexander Witt. If that name sounds sort of familiar, but you can't quite place it, remember the various Resident Evil movies, about the 10 million Resident Evil movies they did? Well, he did Resident Evil Apocalypse. There is, however, no Nemesis firing off rockets, more in the pity, but it was written by 4 different people. Either screenplay or story. 4 different people wrote this, and since it is Chilean, I'm probably going to mispronounce some of these names. I do apologize in advance. Patricio Lynch, not to be confused with David Lynch, because the names are entirely different. Julio Royce, who's done podcasts, apparently, podcast series. Carlos Dagno, who's done television, and Paula De Fierro, who did podcasts and television. And this stars, wait for it, the character named Sayen. I had to make sure that I got that pronunciation correctly. Not Sayen, you know what I'm saying, no Chilean Sayen here. Nobody going Super Saiyan, just using ingenuity and nature and the fact that some people know certain areas better than others that claim that they know what's better for the land. So Sayen is played by Roland Montenegro. Really had to be careful how you pronounce that last name. And she is the granddaughter of a grandmother, obviously, Iwen, who doesn't want to make a deal with this corporation for a certain section of her land. This particular corporation wants to strip mine and do all this stuff, and since it's taking place in South America, which is where Chile is. Oh, look, it's chilly outside. Yeah, I couldn't help but make that pun. Let's just say things decide to basically get all fucked up and all crazy, and now with the grandmother dead, Sayen is going to use her ingenuity and her abilities to take down this corporation in one way or another. She is going to solve this mystery by making this corporation history. Sayen Tales, woohoo! So yes, nevertheless, this is basically about indigenous people. It's also about a little bit, also has some beautiful shots of the Chilean woods. Somewhere in Chile. I don't actually know where, because my knowledge of Chilean geography is not all that great. I know, a bit shocking. She knows certain people that are part of this particular tribe, group, whatever word you want to use. And various actors populate this movie. We have Antonio, played by Aaron Piper, who is the main villain of this whole thing. A headstrong young man. Not a trapped version of Headstrong. Antonio actually seems to understand things, unlike the band Trapped, if you know, you know. And he's got his father, Maximo. Enrique Arce, or Arc, possibly. And he's a businessman that has a bunch of businesses all over the world, strip mining areas in Africa because they bless the rains down in Africa, and then they decide to steal the minerals that have come their way. And also there is Miranda, who's kind of their mercenary. Miranda the Mercenary. Really should have called her that. Loreto Aravana, who is quite lovely, I do want to say. She is kind of the badass of the group. And then there are a few other people like Lyra, not Rise of Lyra, not Lyric, not Rise of Lyric. He is a geologist, and various people populate this, but once Sayen loses her grandmother, she just goes absolutely insane, and you can't really necessarily blame her. The movie's 95 minutes, and the story gets told in some flashbacks. We have a bit of a thing in the beginning where Sayen is being pursued by the villains, and then jumps into the river, and then we go back 3 days earlier where she visits her grandmother, interacts with various people that she has known since childhood, including a man named Jose, and, the various other people in this particular group. We see some parts of, like, how basically the natives are getting restless. Leave the heat. Just a little more heat, Ernie. Just a little more heat. Have to use that Ernie Ladd line right there because it just fits so well. And we see how the indigenous people just want to live. They just want to live, and their land is basically being taken from them and everything. And it's kind of it's a social commentary on all the shit that's been happening for centuries, honestly. Goddamn centuries. The movie's well shot, well acted enough. It's not the most wholly original thing in the world, but I will say as far as a grounded film, it works pretty well. The action scenes get a little bit silly. There are a few stunts where I'm like, okay, we're just defying physics at this goddamn point. But there are a few scenes, one particular scene that takes place on a bridge that I thought was pretty well filmed. And it is more of a low-level film that has a good story about family. They're, you know, nothing can beat family unless you're Chris Benoit. Boy, this is going well. But they have a great thing about family and how Sayen just wants to be. She wants to be the very best, like no one ever was, but she really just wants revenge on the people that killed her grandmother. And that happens over time, and other people populate the movie, and that's really all I have to say about that without getting into spoilers. If you have an Amazon account, it is free. It's certainly not a bad movie. I mean, again, not wholly original, not great, but well acted and well shot and everything. And some of the action actually is pretty good. And you feel for some of the characters, even if the movie does move at enough of a brisk pace where you don't really get a chance to care about some of them, at least you get to see enough people meet their unfortunate and timely end. Or maybe you don't. You got to watch the movie to find out. So I am going to get into spoilers, but again, on Amazon, if you want to check it out, give it a shot. Maybe you'll end up liking it. Certainly one of the better movies this year. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, spoilers. Okay, that was a weird goddamn countdown right there. But nevertheless, we go back to 3 days earlier after we see Sayen jump in the river. She meets her grandmother. Her grandmother gets talked to by Antonio and his group about, you know, making a deal for part of the land and everything. This geologist is trying to tell her, hey, this is what needs to happen. Don't worry, we're not going to impose anything on you. You're going to be able to live here. Nothing bad will happen to you. Those deals always work out well. Let's just say the grandmother says no. And then Sayen piggybacks on one of their trucks, stows away, so to speak, records some stuff about, you know, various things that they're going to be doing. Maximo's an insane megalomaniac, and Antonio really is a chip off the old goddamn block. And then they pursue Sayen back through this one particular area, through the forest into the woods to grandmother's house they go. Hey, hey! She goes on this weird zip line thing where apparently they just put supplies in a basket and just trust the thing's going to get there. I don't really understand that at all. And then through various things of trying to get Sayen's phone, they end up shooting the grandmother, and that ends up pissing her off. She gets knocked out. They set the place on fire, the barn area, as it were, but it's all connected, so the house burns down. Because why not, oh, I don't know, negotiate and not shoot somebody, but we can't do that. We then get flashbacks of how Sayen wanted to be a warrior, heart to win. And as one guy tells her, our training is more than a way of fighting. You know, you have to use ingenuity. You have to be smart and everything. Sayen basically wants revenge. After ending up in the river and ending up injured, she ends up having to nurse her injuries. Maximo is pissed at Antonio because how dare you let this one woman stop us? How dare you let this happen, Antonio? And there are some protests going awry, so to speak, because they want to honor the memory of Awen, the grandmother. I'm pretty certain I'm butchering some of these names, and I greatly apologize if I am. And they want to honor her in a funeral. And then while these various people, these various villains, some that aren't villains, but some that are just, you know, co-conspirators, so to speak, I guess. One gets, you know, stabbed in the leg trying to get Sayen, and then he ends up getting shot because he's got a leg wound, and they're like, we can't have him here. Boom. We're going to shoot him off camera. And then Jose shows up, stopping some cops, getting some people involved. Some people that were arrested and saying, okay, you're not going to do this. You're not going to do this. We're going to go off and make our own adventure with blackjack and hookers. And then they end up going and meeting Sayen, and all this stuff gets banded together. But then everybody gets involved in a gun shootout, as opposed to another shootout not involving guns. And then a motorcycle race. It ends in comical fashion when Miranda just gets launched about 20 feet in the air into a tree, and she's dead. And then there's a ceremony for Awen. Somehow they got her body back, or they had a ceremony for somebody's body. We're not exactly totally sure. I will say the music didn't appeal to me, but also I'm not familiar with Chilean rap or the Chilean music scene, or really anything in Chile. That is, except that the weather is rather chilly. So Antonio is basically a creep. He captures Sayen and ends up being all creepy towards her. Jose frees her, but then gets shot, and then she goes nuts. They runs down to a beach where they both get in boats, Antonio forgets how much how many bullets a gun can take, a gun that I think can take all of 2-3 bullets, and ends up pursuing her on a boat. Somehow a helicopter gets there because the authorities are alerted and say, hey, you've killed all these people, Antonio. You need to stop that. Or maybe, maybe they're going after her. I mean, it gets a little bit messy at the end. And then they end up getting on a boat, pursuing back. She stabs him in the leg with something, or in the side with something, and then the boat crashes and explodes. And now suddenly she is being blamed by the governments and everything because she is standing up for what she believes in. And she's also shaved her head, and she's going north to stop more of these, crazy, crazy strip mining things and everything. She's going to be a one-woman wrecking crew. Yeah, the movie gets a little bit messy at the end. I will say B, though, it ends up being entertaining and at least, I think, does well with the culture that it's, trying to, bring to light. I mean, it doesn't get any higher than a B, but again, it's not a bad movie. At least I didn't think it was a bad movie, especially in comparison to some of the direct I've seen this year. So yeah, B. Agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Reckland. I'll see you soon.